husband came home early, found a man's clothes in our room, and made me regret everything.
I've made a very big mistake, guys. I don't even know where the mistakes began. I've destroyed my once happy marriage because of my lustful desires. I don't even know how I got here. Everything was at the verge of being lost. Everything happened so fast, and I'm so ashamed of myself right now. I've done something so despicable. I can't even look myself in the mirror right now, and I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself for having an affair with my husband's friend. I blame myself for everything. I got so carried away by my lust that I couldn't even control myself. What should I do now? I'm so confused and lost. Hi guys, my name is Anita, and I'm a 30-year-old fashion designer. I have been a fashion designer since I was 16 years old, but not professionally though. I learned the basics of fashion designing from my mom. She was also a fashion designer. I have been a professional fashion designer for 10 years now. I'm married to a medical doctor. His name is Derek, and he is 32 years old. We live in Rochester, New York, USA. Derek and I have been married for 5 years now. Derek is one of the best things that has happened to me. He is my soulmate and the absolute love of my life. Derek and I met in college, and ever since then, we have been inseparable. Everyone thinks I married Derek because of his money, but that's not true. I won't blame them for thinking that way because physically Derek is not handsome and is below average height, but all these things don't matter to me. The quality that attracted me to Derek is his caring nature. I can boldly say without mincing any words that Derek loves me more than he loves himself, and he provides everything I ask of him and even more. He can go to any length to see me happy. Our relationship started having some challenges ever since Derek was transferred to a neighboring town 6 months ago. He asked if we could relocate together, but I told him it was not possible. I used my fashion designing business as an excuse, but that was not the reason. Derek volunteered to work for an NGO, and he was sent to a remote town for 2 years. I couldn't imagine going to start life all over again in another place, and it was a remote town. So I told him I would have loved to go but couldn't because of my business. He understood my reasons, but I could tell he was disappointed from the look on his face. He promised to be visiting once every month, and he asked if that's okay by me, and I said yes. I didn't know being away from each other would cause a huge gap in our marriage. The distance became an issue, and even communication became hard because Derek was always busy. But he still made time for us to communicate once in a while. Derek made sure we communicated at least 3 times daily, and we did video calls daily. Derek made sure he kept his promises by visiting at least once every month. I started getting bored of everything over time, even though Derek was my best friend and we did practically everything together. It was just hard for me to cope by myself. I was lonely and needed someone by my side. One day, on my way home from the grocery store, a car suddenly came to a stop and the person in the car approached me where I was standing. His face looked familiar, but I could not place where I had met him before. He introduced himself as Nathan, Derek's friend, and I immediately remembered him. He was one of Derek's groomsmen at our wedding. He asked about Derek, and I told him Derek had been away for his NGO work for about 6 months. He offered to drop me at home because my car was faulty and was with the mechanic. I was reluctant at first, but he insisted, so I obliged. The ride home was so fun that I didn't even know when we arrived at my gate. He offered to help me carry my groceries inside, and I accepted. He came in and even helped me arrange my groceries. I offered him a cup of coffee and we continued gisting. Nathan is handsome and he is very fun to be with. He is 6 feet tall and he can pass for a model. He wanted to go, but I begged him to stay a little since there was still time. We decided to have a glass of wine and watch a movie together. That was all I can remember, guys. Nothing prepared me for what happened next. The next morning, I woke up to see Nathan on my matrimonial bed. You guys are shocked, right? So was I. I can't even remember anything that happened, but one thing was certain. I had slept with my husband's friend, and I didn't even know how it happened. I was devastated, but Nathan behaved as if nothing had happened. I was panicking while he was calm. He told me to relax and that it was normal, and I wouldn't be the first person to sleep with my husband's friend. He categorically told me he didn't take advantage of me, and that I consented to everything that happened. Well, I was too drunk to remember anything that happened, but he offered to make breakfast for me. I asked him to leave immediately, but he refused. He insisted on making breakfast for me. I was still hungover from the previous night, so there was not much I could do. I didn't know what to do. I felt bad. I'm not proud of what I did. Derek didn't deserve it. I don't even know what came over me all of a sudden. How could I let myself stoop so low to have an affair with my husband's friend? I asked myself that a lot because I didn't think Derek would ever forgive me for what I did. What he feared the most had happened. Derek has trust issues because of his past relationships. He always told me ladies come around him because of his money and end up cheating on him. I assured him that I'm different and that I would never do that to him. Initially, Derek doubted my love for him. He couldn't understand why I was him if not for his money, but slowly I gained his trust. I made him understand that there's more to a person than just looks, and I made see himself in another light. I can't believe I have broken that trust. How do I convince Derek that I got carried away? I know he would think I'm just like the rest of his exes. I was so scared because I knew how wrong I'd been. I was still thinking of what to do when Nathan walked in with a food tray in his hand. I was furious, but I couldn't bring myself to ask him to leave. He offered me breakfast, and I ate. He consoled me and told me everything would be fine. I feel so bad right now because even though I could have stopped, I kept making the wrong choices. My affair with Nathan continued and knew what I was doing was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to stop. Nathan and I became so close that he moved in with me. Derek could no longer visit once in a month like he used to because he became very busy with work, but he made sure we still communicate every day. Whenever he called, Nathan would excuse me so I would be comfortable talking to Derek. It felt weird at first, but with time, I got used to it. One day I got a call from Derek. He told me he had a surprise for me. I thought he had sent a package for me as usual, but I was wrong. He asked me to open the door, and I hurriedly ran towards the door, but nothing prepared me for the shock I experienced when I opened the door and saw Derek. I froze for seconds, and he had to tap me to bring me back to reality. He could tell I wasn't thrilled to see him. He asked why I wasn't happy seeing him, and I knew I would get caught if I didn't act fast, so I had to come up with something. I wanted to lie about being sick, but I remembered Derek was a medical doctor and I couldn't get away with it. So I had to come up with something else. I lied to him that I was having menstrual cramps. He knew how bad my cramps were. So he asked me to take a rest and just relax. Everything was going well, and I was so lost enjoying the pampering I was getting from Derek that I didn't have time to think about the mess I was in. Nothing prepared me for what happened next. Derek went upstairs to change his clothes and stumbled on Nathan's things in his closet. From clothes to singlets and boxers. He was furious, and I could hear it from the way he spoke to me. At that moment, I wanted the ground to open so I could just disappear. I knew that could be the end for me. I wanted to confess, but I knew that Derek would not forgive me if I confessed to him that I was having an affair with his friend. I didn't confess to Derek, and I didn't get caught. I lied to Derek when he asked me about the things he saw in his closet. I told him those things belonged to my brother. I told him my brother was in town for work. He asked why I never mentioned it to him, considering the fact that we spoke every day, but I told him it must have skipped my mind. He asked why my brother's things were in his closet, and at that moment, I knew he was not buying my lies and he wasn't going to back down. I told him my brother had been busy with work, so I was just helping him to do his laundry. From the look he had on his face, I could tell he didn't believe every single thing I was told. I even had tears on my face and accused him of not trusting me. I'm so ashamed of myself, and I can't believe I stopped that low. He wiped my tears and apologized to me. He never mentioned anything about that matter again. I quickly ran out and called Nathan not to come back that Derek was back. I was thankful that Nathan was not at home when Derek returned. I thought it was the universe working in my favor. All through the time Derek was around, I was pretending to be happy, but the truth was that I was dying with guilt. Seeing Derek reminded me why I got married to him and why I rejected a lot of proposals just to be with him. I think it was at that point I knew the gravity of what I had done. Here is a man that can do absolutely anything for me. A man that went against his family just to be with me. A man that made sure he provided everything I ever asked of. He was the man that stood by me when everyone called me a gold digger, the very man that changed my life. How did I even bring myself to have an affair with his friend? I was so disconnected from everything. I'm just very tired. Update. Derek noticed I was not myself and asked me countless times what was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. I was scared of what the outcome would be. I felt bad for betraying him. It wasn't a conscious decision, but how do I explain to him that it was loneliness that pushed me into the arms of his friend? Don't get me wrong, guys. I take 100% accountability for everything that happened, but I wouldn't have slept with Nathan if Derek hadn't been transferred. I could tell Derek was beginning to suspect me when I saw him snooping on our CCTV camera, but thank goodness I was smart enough to deactivate it anytime Nathan was around. Derek monitored every one of my steps, and he went as far as checking my phone, but I had deleted all my call logs and messages, which even raised his suspicion. I guess he was only looking for evidence before he could say something. He became more agitated when my brother never returned. You guys remember I lied to him about my brother being in town, right? I had to cover up with another lie. I told him my brother was called for work urgently in another town. Before Derek went back, he told me he would be resigning and he is planning on opening his own clinic so he would stop traveling and we could start a family. Derek and I had always wanted kids, but because of the nature of his volunteer job with the NGO, we couldn't have kids because he was always not around. We decided we would have kids when he was more stable, because he always told me he wanted to be part of our kids' lives. It was mixed feelings for me. On one hand, I was happy we could finally have kids. On the other side, I was sad about my affair with Nathan. Would Derek still have kids with me when he finds out I slept with his friend? I know he wouldn't. I know the man I married has an unforgiving spirit. He never forgave any of his ex-girlfriends that cheated on him. What more about me, his own wife? I knew how hard it was for Derek to finally be able to trust me, and it took a lot of work to get here. I can't believe I messed up everything. Derek went back to officially resign, and I decided to finally end things with Nathan. I decided to meet with Nathan outside my house, but I remembered some of his things were still in my house, so I called him over to break up with him officially. I told him it was over and that I couldn't continue seeing him. He demanded to know the reason for the sudden change of attitude, but I told him it was not his business and that he should get his things and get out. Nathan started packing his things when he saw my mind was made up, and he told me I would regret my actions one day and come back begging. I told him that day would never come. While we were having the back and forth, my phone rang and grabbed it to see who was calling. When I checked, Derek was the one calling. My heart literally jumped out of my chest. I signaled Nathan to excuse me, and he did. I picked the call, and Derek said he was only calling to check up on me and to tell me he had resigned. I was happy, and we continued talking. For a second, I forgot Nathan was still around. While I was still on the phone speaking with Derek, Nathan walked in and informed me with a very loud and angry voice that he had packed up his belongings and he was living. At that moment, I literally died. I guess he thought I was done with the phone call, because Derek and I don't usually speak for long because he is always busy with work. I was praying and hoping that Derek didn't hear what Nathan said, but unfortunately, my hope was dashed when Derek asked what Nathan was doing in our house. How could he identify the voice? I thought they were just casual friends. I forgot to tell you guys one thing about Derek. He never forgets a face or voice. That's one of his traits. I was trying to comprehend everything when he asked me for the second time what Nathan was doing in our home. I was too stunned to speak. I never knew I would get caught, at least not like that, and not when I just ended things with Nathan. I couldn't come up with a lie any longer, and my brain was blank. He told me he knew I was lying when I told him the clothes in his closet belonged to my brother, and that he even got more suspicious when he discovered that I disabled the CCTV camera. He said he knew I was cheating, but what he didn't know was that I was cheating with his friend. At that moment, I couldn't control my tears any longer. He asked me to leave his house before he got back. I couldn't believe what was happening to me, and it felt like my whole world had been shattered. I couldn't bring myself to leave Derek's house. I mean, where would I have gone from there? I knew there was no way I could go back to my parents' house. What would I tell them happened in the first place? I decided to forget all the consequences and wait for Derek. I thought he might forgive me when he found out it was loneliness that pushed me to cheat on him with his friend. But I was wrong. Derek was very furious when he arrived. I have never seen it that way before. He was even more furious when he saw me. He asked me what I was still doing in the house and threatened to call the police and tell them I was trespassing. All my pleading went on deaf ears. He asked me to take everything I came with to his house 5 years ago, and that I shouldn't take anything he bought for me, be it slippers or even hairpins. I went on my knees and started pleading. I begged him to forgive me and give us a second chance, but he was adamant about me leaving, and he didn't listen to everything I said. He promised to make life difficult for me. I tried everything I could, but Derek refused to listen. Worst of all was that I couldn't even call anyone to beg on my behalf because I would have to explain everything to them. I knew no one would understand my plight, not even my friends. They always told me how lucky I was to be married to such a loving, kind, and generous man. Derek made sure I lacked nothing all through our marriage. Money was never my problem. When I saw how adamant Derek was, I picked a few of my things and left, not knowing that was the last time I would step foot in our matrimonial home. I went to crash at my fashion store while I was hoping to squash things out with Derek the following day. I closed down the store temporarily and sent my workers away. I'm still trying to get my thoughts together and find out what to do. I need my husband back in my life. Update: it is still a mystery to me how my life changed in a twinkle of an eye. I mean, how did I go from living in a luxurious mansion to now squatting in my store? Everything happened so fast it didn't make sense. It all felt like a dream, and I wanted to wake up from the nightmare so bad. After days of sleeping at my fashion store, I cried a lot when I realized what my life had become. I got so caught up in my thoughts that I didn't even know when I slept off the next day. I was woken up by the sound of my phone ringing, and it was our lawyer calling. He said he wanted to see me, and I asked him to come to the store. I got the biggest shock of my life when our lawyer arrived with divorce papers. I couldn't believe my eyes. He asked me to sign the divorce papers, but I refused. I tried calling Derek, but I discovered he had blocked my line from reaching him. I decided to go see him at the house, but while I was preparing to go, some group of people arrived at the store, and the lawyer introduced them to me as the new owners of the store. I was flabbergasted, and it took all the little strength left in me for me to keep standing. Apparently, Derek sold my store and gave the proceeds to charity. I couldn't believe my ears, guys. Why would Derek do this to me? I never believed he was capable of such a dubious thing. I know he was the one that opened the store for me with his money after we got married, but I was the one that worked hard to make it what it is now. How can he just throw away my hard work? His name was on the ownership documents, but I never imagined us getting divorced. The new owners of my store gave me 24 hours to vacate the store. I was grateful because 24 hours was more than enough for me, because I thought I could make Derek forgive me and change his mind. I left the store for Derek's place, but I got another shock of my life again. Derek had sold our house and I was not allowed in. It was at that point I knew I had lost everything. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself anymore, because I knew Derek had made up his mind to frustrate me. I tried calling him several times, but it never went through. I signed the divorce papers and decided to move on with my life. I left the store and decided to move to a hotel. I got another shock when my card was declined. Apparently, Derek has striked again. This time, he wiped everything from our joint account because we operated a joint account together. I was the one that suggested the idea because Derek earned more and it made me have access to his money and could go shopping anytime I wanted. I faced the biggest embarrassment of my life that day, and the hotel receptionist wanted to make a scene. I had to leave before things escalated. Here I am, guys, homeless, divorced, and penniless. I can only get the alimony when the divorce is finalized. It dawned on me at that moment that my life was over. I used my hands to ruin my life. With all hope being lost and me not having anywhere to go, I decided to contact Nathan. At first, he refused to pick up my call, but picked it up when I continued calling. I asked if we could meet so we could talk, but he told me he was busy and didn't have time. I told him everything that had happened to me and that I was homeless and needed a place to stay urgently. He told me he wasn't in town, I asked if I could go to his house, and he said that his girlfriend was around. That was another huge shocker for me. He told me he has a girlfriend now and that I should move on with my life. He told me he was only having fun with me and that it was nothing serious. Nathan went on to tell me how he once met Derek at a bar, and they were gossiping about women and how they cheated. According to him, Derek had been singing my praises, that he knows I can never cheat on him, and that he trusts me with his life. So, he decided to experiment and see if what Derek was saying was true, and unfortunately, I fell easily for his tricks. Guys, listening to Nathan made me realize how loose I was. I felt dirty at that instant and asked myself how I allowed myself to fall for his cheap tricks. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't forgive myself for the mistake I made. I was so mad at myself that I fell into depression. Nothing made sense to me again. I couldn't even reach Derek so I could apologize for breaking his trust and causing him pain. I decided to pick up what was left of my life. I went back to my parents' house in Chicago, where I joined my mom in her store. The news of my infidelity soon spread like wildfire across the town. Life never made sense to me again. Can you guys imagine that a few months ago, I was living like a queen in a big palace, and now I'm back in a small town where I have to depend on my parents for everything? I couldn't even afford to buy myself things as little as underwear. My life became a horror movie from the day I had an affair with my husband's friend. The lust was never worth it, and it would never be worth what I lost. I regret everything, but it's too late now, and I know it. I wish I never went out shopping for groceries on that fateful day. I wish I never met Nathan or even fell for his tricks. That was how I ruined my marriage and life. That's my story, guys. I hope we all learn to be faithful to our partners, and most importantly, we should never bite the hand that feeds us. I guess everyone knows this except me. Thanks and goodbye.
Hi Reddit, Kenneth here. You know, I always thought I had a pretty good handle on life. A stable job as a software engineer, a comfortable apartment in San Francisco, and a marriage that, while not perfect, seemed solid enough. But I guess life has a way of throwing curvy balls when you least expect it. Let me take you back to how this all began, a day that started like any other, but ended up turning my world upside down. It was a typical foggy morning in the city. Melissa, my wife, had already left for her job at the marketing firm. I was working from home as usual, my day planned out with meetings and code debugging. Our apartment, a quaint space with a view of the bustling streets below, was unusually quiet without her presence. As I was getting ready to dive into my work, I noticed something odd under our bed. It was a small, leather-bound book, partially hidden under the loose floorboard that we always kept meaning to fix, but never got around to. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled it out. It was Melissa's diary. Now, I'm not the type to pry into someone's private thoughts, but something about the way it was hidden made me pause. I flipped through the pages, and that's when my world stopped. The diary detailed Melissa's secret meetings, not with clients or friends, but other men. The level of detail was staggering. Descriptions of dates, emotions, even intimate moments. I sat there, the diary in my hands, feeling a mix of disbelief and betrayal wash over me. How long had this been going on? Why would Melissa do this? Our marriage had its ups and downs, sure, but I never suspected she would step outside it. I tried to process it all. The diary entries ranged over several months, and the realization that my wife had been living this double life right under my nose was gut-wrenching. I felt like a fool, the last to know about the reality of my own marriage. I closed the diary, my mind racing with questions. Do I confront her right away? Do I gather more evidence? What do I even say? The trust I had in Melissa, in us, felt shattered. As I sat in our quiet apartment, surrounded by memories of a relationship that now felt like a lie, I knew one thing for sure: I couldn't just let this go. There had to be a confrontation. But first, I needed to figure out how to handle this bombshell. So Reddit, that's where my story begins. The day I found out my wife was cheating on me, and the day my quest for the truth and for what to do about it started. Stay tuned, because believe me, it gets even more complicated from here. Hey again Reddit, Kenneth here. After finding Melissa's diary, my world was spinning. I couldn't just sit there with my emotions boiling over. I needed answers, hard evidence. So I decided to do something I never thought I'd do. I started my own secret mission, gathering evidence to confront Melissa about her affairs. Here's how that chapter of my life unfolded. In the days following the discovery, I became obsessed with confirming the diary's revelations. I started looking back at the past months, sifting through our shared memories for any signs I might have missed. It was like watching a movie where you already know the plot twist, and suddenly all the subtle hints make sense. I remembered the late night calls Melissa said were from her office, her sudden interest in new hobbies, and the weekend she spent visiting her parents. The more I thought about it, the more the pieces started falling into place. The inconsistencies were there, hidden in plain sight. Then came the hardest part, gathering more evidence. I felt like a detective in my own home, trying to piece together the reality of my wife's double life. I checked bank statements for unusual expenses, looked for receipts, and even started paying attention to her routine and the way she dressed for work. One evening, I followed her. Yeah, I know how it sounds, but I had to see for myself. I watched from a distance as she met some guy in a cozy downtown restaurant. They were laughing, touching. It was more than just a friendly meetup. That sight, guys, it was like a punch in the gut. My Melissa with someone else. It was real, and it hurt like hell. I also started taking notes, keeping a log of her comings and goings, matching them with the entries in her diary. It was meticulous and emotionally draining work. I felt like a stranger in my own life, spying on my own wife. But with every new piece of evidence, my resolve hardened. I couldn't confront her without being absolutely sure. I couldn't risk her talking her way out of it with excuses. I needed undeniable proof, something she couldn't deny or twist. And as much as I was gathering evidence, I was also preparing myself emotionally. Each new discovery was a blow, but it also steeled me for the inevitable confrontation. I was building a case not just against Melissa's actions, but also against the life of lies we had been living. So there I was, Reddit, a regular guy turned amateur detective, uncovering the painful truth of my marriage bit by bit. And let me tell you, nothing prepares you for something like this. But I had to keep going. I needed to see this through for my own sanity. Stay tuned because this rabbit hole goes deeper. And the confrontation, well, let's just say it was anything but ordinary. Hey Reddit, it's Kenneth again. So, where were we? Yes, the aftermath of my newfound career as a detective in my own love story gone wrong. But let me tell you, gathering evidence was just one part of the ordeal. The real battle was happening inside me, a tornado of emotions that I could barely keep in check. Every day felt like walking through a storm. Anger, sadness, betrayal, these words don't even begin to cover what I was feeling. I was angry at Melissa for her deception, sad about the crumbling of our marriage, and felt utterly betrayed by the person I trusted the most. Sleep became a distant memory. I'd lie awake at night, replaying everything in my mind. What did I do wrong? Were there signs I ignored? It was like a never-ending loop of doubt and self-blame. My work started to suffer, and I found myself zoning out, lost in thoughts. That's when I realized I needed to talk to someone. Bottling up wasn't helping. I decided to confide in my closest friend, Mike. He's been my buddy since college, the kind of friend who's more like a brother. I remember that conversation vividly. We met at our usual spot, a small cafe downtown, away from the prying eyes of our regular haunts. The moment I started telling him everything, from the diary to my late-night sleuthing, I could see the shock on his face. Man, I had no idea, he said, his eyes wide with disbelief. He listened, really listened, as I poured out everything. The anger, the pain, the sense of utter betrayal. Mike was a rock, not interrupting, just letting me vent. After I was done, he leaned back, rubbing his chin, a habit when he's deep in thought. Ken, this is messed up, but you gotta confront her. You can't live like this, man. But do it smartly. Be calm, collected. Don't let your emotions get the better of you. His words made sense, but it was easier said than done. How do you stay calm when your world is falling apart? Mike suggested I seek professional advice, maybe talk to a counselor or a lawyer before making any moves. Don't do anything rash. Think this through, he advised. That conversation with Mike was a lifeline. It didn't solve my problems, but it gave me a bit of clarity, a momentary respite from the chaos of my emotions. He was right. I couldn't let my emotions drive my actions. But that was a tall order, especially when every fiber of my being was screaming for some sort of action, some kind of retribution. So there I was, Reddit, caught in the eye of an emotional hurricane, trying to make sense of the senseless. My journey was far from over, and the hardest part was yet to come. Stay tuned because what happened next was something I never could have prepared for. Hi again, Reddit. Kenneth here. After all the emotional chaos and nights of planning, it was time to face the music. I had to confront Melissa. But how? I needed a plan, a strategy that would leave no room for her to wriggle out of the truth. I wanted her to know that I knew, but more importantly, I needed to see her real reaction, unfiltered and genuine. I decided the best approach was to catch her off guard. I needed the element of surprise on my side to see her raw, unguarded response. It wouldn't be easy. Melissa was sharp, and if she sensed something amiss, she might put up her defenses. I needed to be subtle, yet direct. So, I came up with a plan. I'd act normal for a few days, go about our routine as if nothing had changed. This part was tough, Reddit. Acting like everything was okay, talking and laughing with her, all the while knowing what I knew it felt like playing a role in a twisted play. During these days, I paid extra attention to her habits, her schedule. I noticed she'd been a bit distracted lately, probably due to her own guilt. I used this to my advantage. I told her I had to go on a sudden business trip for a couple of days, a believable lie, given my job. But instead of going on a trip, I stayed in the city at a friend's place. The plan was to return home unexpectedly the next evening, when she'd likely be feeling relaxed, thinking she had the apartment to herself. That evening, my heart was pounding as I made my way back to our apartment. The closer I got, the more the suspense built up. It felt like I was stepping into a showdown, the climax of a story that had been building up for far too long. I reached our building, took a deep breath, and walked up to our door. My hand was shaking a bit as I unlocked it. The apartment was quiet. I stepped in, trying to make as little noise as possible. There she was, in the living room, a glass of wine in her hand, completely unaware of my return. She looked up, startled, as I walked in. "Kenneth, what are you doing here? I thought you were." Her voice trailed off as she saw the look on my face. "Surprised to see me?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. The look on her face read it. It was a mix of shock, fear, and something else, guilt maybe. It was hard to read. But one thing was clear, she hadn't expected me, and that's exactly what I wanted. "Kenneth, what's going on? Why are you looking at me like that?" she stammered, setting her wine glass down. "We need to talk, Melissa. It's about time we had a real conversation," I said, my heart racing but my voice calm. And there we were, standing in our living room, the stage set for a confrontation that had been brewing for far too long. The air was thick with tension, and I knew that whatever happened next would change everything. So, Reddit, this was the moment of truth, the moment I'd been preparing for. Stay tuned, because what came next was a conversation I'll never forget.
Hey Reddit, Kenneth here again. The moment had arrived, the confrontation I had been both dreading and eagerly anticipating. My heart was racing as I stood there in our living room facing Melissa. This was it, the moment of truth.
"Melissa, we need to talk about your meetings," I began, trying to keep my voice steady. Her eyes widened slightly, a hint of panic flickering across her face. "What meetings? I don't know what you're talking about, Kenneth," she replied, her voice a mix of confusion and defensiveness. I could feel the anger bubbling inside me, but I knew I had to keep it in check. "I'm talking about the meetings you've been having with other men, Melissa, the ones you've written about in your diary." I watched her closely, looking for any sign of her crumbling facade. Her face turned pale. "My diary? You read my diary?" she gasped, her voice rising. "That's private. You had no right." I was ready for this, the deflection, the outrage. "I think I had every right when it concerns our marriage," I countered firmly. "I found it by accident, but what I read. Melissa, how could you?" She started pacing, her hands wringing together. "Kenneth, you're misunderstanding things. It's not what you think. They're just fantasies, nothing real. I haven't cheated on you." But I was prepared. "Fantasies? Is that why I found receipts for hotels, charges for dinners at places we've never been together? Is that why you've been so distant lately?" Her eyes darted around the room, as if looking for an escape. "Kenneth, please, you're blowing this out of proportion. I love you. I would never do anything to hurt you." The denials, the gaslighting, it was all there. But I had one more card to play. "Melissa, I followed you one evening. I saw you with him. I saw the way you were together." The color drained from her face. There was a long, heavy silence. Then, in a barely audible whisper, she said, "You followed me?"
"Yes, Melissa. I needed to know the truth, and now I do." My voice was calm, but inside, I was a storm of emotions.
The room was thick with tension. Melissa sat down, her posture deflated, the fight gone out of her. "Kenneth, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this to happen." Sorry. The word echoed in my mind. Was it enough? Could it ever be enough? So there we were, Reddit, in the ruins of our marriage, surrounded by the debris of lies and betrayal. The confrontation I had imagined so many times had unfolded, but the feeling of victory I had expected was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was just emptiness, a hollow realization that things would never be the same again. Stay tuned, folks. The story doesn't end here. The aftermath of that confrontation led me down paths I never expected to walk. Hey Reddit, Kenneth back again. After that confrontation, I thought I'd feel a sense of relief, maybe even victory. But all I felt was a crushing weight of reality sinking in. Our marriage, which I had believed to be built on love and trust, was now in shambles. Here's how I dealt with the fallout. In the days following our confrontation, our apartment became a silent battlefield. Melissa and I moved around each other like ghosts, barely speaking. The air was heavy with unspoken words and lingering resentment. She tried to initiate conversations a few times, probably to explain or apologize, but I wasn't ready to hear any of it. My bold and unforgiving nature was at the forefront, leaving no room for her excuses. I spent long hours staring out the window, watching the city move while my own life felt stuck in a standstill. My mind kept replaying the confrontation, her admissions, and the years of deception. Anger and betrayal battled with the remnants of love I still felt. It was a confusing mix of emotions that I struggled to process. During this time, I leaned heavily on my friend Mike. He was my sounding board, letting me vent, offering advice, or sometimes just sitting in silence with me. His support was invaluable. But as the days passed, the practicalities of our situation started to demand attention. We couldn't continue living like this in a constant state of tension and avoidance. I began to think about separation, the logistics of it, the inevitability of it. It was a tough pill to swallow, the end of a relationship I had invested so much in. One evening, I finally broke the silence. Melissa, we need to talk about what comes next. My voice was steady, but inside, I was anything but calm. We sat down, two people who had once been inseparably in love, now negotiating the terms of our separation. It was surreal, discussing who would move out, how we would divide our things, and what this meant for our future. Melissa seemed resigned, a stark contrast to her usual fiery self. Maybe she too had accepted the reality of our situation. The decision was made. I would stay in the apartment, and she would move out. We agreed to keep things as amicable as possible, for the sake of the years we had shared. But as practical as we tried to be, the emotional undercurrent was hard to ignore. This was more than just a change of living arrangements. It was the end of a chapter in our lives. In the following weeks, Melissa moved her things out. Each item she took felt like a piece of our life together being removed. It was a tangible reminder of the impermanence of relationships, of how quickly things can change. So there I was, Reddit, left in an apartment that once felt like a home, now just a space filled with memories. The fallout from Melissa's betrayal and our confrontation had led me here alone, trying to piece together what to do next. It was a period of reflection, of rebuilding, and most importantly, of healing. Stay with me, folks. The journey isn't over yet. The path to healing and moving forward was a road less traveled, with its own set of twists and turns. After the fallout of the confrontation and dealing with the immediate aftermath, it was time to face the future. The path to resolution was not just about putting legal and logistical pieces in place. It was also about emotional healing and rediscovering who I was without Melissa. First things first, I had to tackle the legal and practical aspects of our separation. It was a tedious and sometimes painful process, dealing with lawyers, diving into the nitty-gritty of who gets what, and signing papers that officially marked the end of our marriage. Each signature felt like closing a chapter, a mix of sadness and relief. I was saying goodbye to a significant part of my life, but I was also opening the door to new possibilities. During this time, I did a lot of reflecting. I thought about my relationship with Melissa, trying to understand where things went wrong. I realized that while her betrayal was the breaking point, there were signs of trouble long before the diary. We had become more like roommates than partners, comfortable, but not truly connected. I had to acknowledge my part in that. But dwelling on the past wasn't going to help me move forward. So I started planning for the future. I threw myself into work, taking on new projects that challenged and engaged me. I reconnected with old friends, went out more, and even picked up new hobbies. I started cycling, something I had always wanted to do, but never got around to. It was liberating, feeling the wind against my face, the road stretching ahead, much like my life. Mike was a constant presence, encouraging me to get out and live. "You're in control now, Ken. Make the most of it," he would say. And he was right. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in the driver's seat of my life. I made decisions based on what I wanted, not what was expected of me or what was comfortable. Through this journey, I learned a lot about myself. I realized that I'm stronger than I thought, capable of overcoming betrayal and heartbreak. I discovered the importance of self-care, of looking after my own emotional and mental well-being. And perhaps most importantly, I learned that it's okay to let go, to move on from things that no longer serve you. So there I was, Reddit, at the end of a long and tumultuous road. The pain of the past was still a part of me, but it no longer defined me. I was moving forward, one step at a time, building a life that was all about me and my choices. Stay tuned for the final update. Hello again, Reddit. Kenneth here for one last update. It's been a journey, hasn't it? From the moment I found Melissa's diary to this point, where I'm typing out what feels like the final chapter of a long, turbulent saga. So let's dive in. The divorce is finalized now. It's strange to say it out loud, I am no longer Melissa's husband. The end of our marriage was a turning point, a definitive closure to a significant part of my life. It was hard, one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was necessary. It marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of something new, my life, on my terms. Reflecting on this entire experience, I've learned a lot. I learned about resilience, the kind that's forged in the fires of betrayal and heartbreak. I discovered strength I never knew I had, the kind that comes from picking yourself up when your world falls apart. And I learned about forgiveness, not necessarily for Melissa, but for myself. Forgiving myself for not seeing the signs, for being a part of a failed marriage. It's been a process, but I'm getting there. As for my hopes for the future, they're brighter than I ever thought possible in the midst of my ordeal. I've started to reimagine my life, exploring possibilities that were once just distant thoughts. I've been traveling more, something I always wanted to do but never got around to. I've visited places I'd only seen in pictures, met new people, experienced different cultures. It's been eye-opening and incredibly liberating. I've also dived back into the dating pool, slowly but surely. I'm not rushing into anything, just enjoying meeting new people and experiencing new connections. I'm more cautious now, more aware of what I want and what I don't want in a relationship. It's a learning curve, but an exciting one. But the most significant change has been within me. I've embraced a new perspective on life, one that values the present, cherishes genuine connections, and looks forward to the future with optimism. I'm more in touch with who I am, what I want in life, and how I want to live it. So, Reddit, here I am. A man who went through one of the toughest times in his life and came out the other side stronger and more self-aware. It wasn't easy, but it was a journey worth taking. I've found closure, I've embraced my new life, and I'm excited about what the future holds. Thank you all for following my story, for your advice and your support. It's been an incredible comfort to share this journey with a community of strangers who became a part of my story. Here's to new beginnings and a future full of possibilities. Signing off, Kenneth.